Mental roadblocks are something that show up in our lives every single day. We're talking about how to plow through them. Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Edgy Entrepreneur Podcast, where we believe that if you're not focusing on your mindset, you're leaving 80% of your business potential on the table. We are your hosts. I am Daniel Tribby, alongside...
I am Coach Oriana. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are talking about overcoming resistance to change.
Yes, resistance. Oh, the resistance. We all feel it. We all feel it in so many different ways, right? It could come from that little voice in our head that tells us we're not good enough. That self-limiting belief could be from family members, friends who say, well, why? Why you want to do that?
Sure. Voices inside, voices outside.
Right, everywhere. So,
but sometimes it's legit, right?
No, of course it is. Of course it is. I think there's times when you need to listen to it, right? Somebody says, you probably shouldn't do that. Then that is a resistance thing that you do need to pay attention to. Absolutely. So what, from a resistance standpoint, let's identify exactly what it is. So hit us with that. What is resistance?
Yeah, it's a good, it's good to understand what it is because, as you said, you feel it, right? Resistance is a feeling that manifests itself in your body. First, in subtle ways and in overt ways, right? It starts off subtle, and it also manifests in your mind, right? In your thoughts. It's what you think about the circumstances that you're in or the situation that's being presented to you, right? Thoughts start popping up. Some of those thoughts could be very legitimate. Some of those thoughts could be your limiting beliefs, right? Whatever it is that you believe about yourself and your ability to, be successful at something or to engage in something well, right? The first thing that pops into your head might be, shit, I can't do that, right? Like if I was going to do something I've never done before, but was also like in alignment with my business, right? I might think that's going to be tough or challenging. Okay, that's really going to stretch me, but maybe I'll still end up deciding to do it, even though I felt resistance at first, right?
Right.
Whereas, if my 23-year-old nephew does some trick on the skateboard and then hands me the skateboard and goes, hey, do you want to try it?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Right?
I like my wrists and I'm not breaking my head today. I'm not doing any of that.
I like having my arms. I need my arms and my face intact for when I interact with my clients. I'm not doing that, right? Right? And so that resistance showed up, right? I felt it in my body. It came up in my thoughts. One of them, in one case, it's totally legitimate, right? In another case, it's like, it's not necessarily that it's illegitimate, but it warrants being examined, right? Like in the case of my business where I'm being challenged to engage in something that would grow me or grow my work, support my clients in a new way, but I've never done before, right? That initial like, oh,
right.
Shoot, never been there.
Could exist as a roadblock, right?
Sure. And it could be entirely just mental.
Right. And it could be just something related to, is it something that I don't know and that's why I don't know how to proceed? Or is it something that I've created in my mind that says, I don't know how to do this, so it means I'm not good enough anymore, or I shouldn't do this, or I suck at it, something like that. And so, and what I think we need to understand, physiologically is the way that your brain works. Right? The primitive brain that we have exists to do two things. You guys who are return listeners have heard me say this over and over and over again. Thrive and survive mechanisms inside your brain. All right. So the thriving part would mean, what do I need to do to get better, to have good relationships, all those kinds of things. But the survival mechanism here is something that often keeps you in a place of comfort, right? Your brain desires to stay where it is because it's what it knows. And so that place of comfort is that voice that says, oh, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, because you're going to stretch yourself. And we like being right here. I like my zone. I like my box.
Yeah.
Right. And if that is a part of your resistance, you have to find ways to move past that thought process and get out of that comfort zone, because everything inside your comfort zone doesn't lead to growth. It leads to staying right where the hell you are.
Yeah, well, nothing inside your comfort zone leads to growth. You know, it leads to exactly what it is. It's comfort, and then over time it becomes stagnation.
Right.
Right. So understanding what your resistance is, you know, whether your resistance is legitimate or not, what the feeling is, right? So let's get more into the feeling. So what does resistance feel like when it manifests in the body? Because I really do think that we feel it in our body even before you feel it, or you think about it. The thoughts come up in your mind.
So things like anxiety, stress,
yeah,
tension. I've heard people say like tightness in the chest.
Yeah.
You know, you have sometimes you have a physical reaction to it, right? So, but so outside of physical reactions too, right? There's a mental reaction, right? So feelings of what kind of things happen mentally.
Yeah. So mentally, you could have, we talked about the series of different thoughts, right? Like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't know if I should do that. Mm-hmm. So any thoughts that limit you, right? We're not talking about legitimacy of those thoughts as it relates to the circumstance right at this moment, where we're talking about those thoughts that come up that are essentially putting a stop sign in front of you, right? They're pushing you to pump the brakes on the situation, whether that's because you need more information or because really this scenario is absolutely, you know, like you're just not going to do that, right? Like, I'm not going to do tricks on a skateboard kind of example, right?
Right.
So it could be any one of those thoughts that are telling you you can't, you shouldn't, and all the reasons why. You know, now if those thoughts are rooted in limitations on your beliefs about yourself, like, I'm not worthy, I don't deserve this, who would listen to me? Why would I, like, who would buy this? Nobody. Who would buy this from me? Who would buy this at this price point? Who would pay me to do this? Nobody would pay me to do this.
Right.
Those types of thoughts, then yeah, that's worth evaluating and reflecting on, right? Like, we need to.
That's a deeper issue inside of you, right?
It is a deeper issue, right? And it warrants actually reflecting on that. And sometimes you need somebody to walk you through that, because we need to get to this place where we are observers of our thoughts and recognizing that we're not our actual thoughts. We're the person, we're the entity, whatever that is for you, that has the capacity to observe what you think and go, wait, what the hell is that?
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, all these things that you're discussing and are then both from a physical and from a mental aspect, I think one of the biggest things we want to tell everyone is that you need to recognize when these happen to you too. Right? You need to recognize that in the face of resistance, I feel my pulse increase. I feel sweaty palms. I feel shortness of breath. I feel anxiety. I hear some voice telling me I'm not good enough. I need to do this. Don't do that. You have this moment, and you need to be aware that it's there. And then you have to be able to consciously tell yourself what that is. Right? What is that? Is this a real thing, or is this just something that I'm creating to keep me where I'm at?
Exactly. Yes. I love that you talked about something you're creating, right? We are the source of everything around us, everything we manifest, every single, what we think, you know, what we believe. Like, you are the source of creation in your life. So if you're experiencing anxiety, worry, you know, let's just call it resistance for the sake of this, right? And just consider all of those things to be inside of that bucket that we're calling resistance. You are creating that.
Exactly.
The legitimacy of it is neutral right now, right? Like, but we create that, right? So some of these stories are not actually factual, right? Like, I don't deserve that. I'm not worthy of that. I can't do that, right? I don't want to put myself in that situation. What would people say, right? A lot of those stories are not actually factual. Some of the stories about like your actual physical capacity to do something, right? That might actually be accurate.
Right.
But one of the things that I realize is when I get into resistance around a situation, and it's not necessarily my limiting beliefs, it's that the situation is actually misaligned with my personal value system.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I'm being, let's say the opportunity that I'm being presented with is there's something about it that, quote, doesn't feel right, right? That's how most people describe it. That doesn't feel right, like something doesn't feel good to me about it, right? And it's like, if it doesn't feel good, right, whatever that gap is that is being created inside of me between feeling good and not feeling good, or feeling like a hell yes versus a no, whatever's in that gap is resistance.
Right. And I think a lot of people too take too much time to think stuff over. Like when you're initially confronted with a decision or an opportunity, whatever it may be, that first gut wrench reaction you have is typically the right one, right? So you guys know I'm a healthcare provider and I work with healthcare entrepreneurs, so I always have to do this physiological type of discussion when we do these. But what happens in your brain, right? There are two systems, a very analytical based one and a very gut feeling based one, if you will. So your analytical one is your neocortex. That's the one that analyzes every single thing. Your limbic system is the one that is an expression of feeling. So that's why when somebody says to you, well, how do you know you love them? And you stumble over all these words because you're trying to analytically explain a feeling, and you can't. You cannot do that. Like, why do you love your dog? Why do you love your kid? And people are just like, I don't know, man. It's just something I feel, right? And so that is a gut feeling. That is a limbic system response. And when you're faced with a roadblock or a decision or an opportunity that stretches you, right, potentially, or makes you face your value system, like you were just talking about, you're going to have a moment inside of you that just happens immediately. Yes, no.
Yep.
And as soon as you say, well, let me think about it, you are now going to move from a gut feeling to a let me analyze the entire situation and find every excuse under the sun to do it or not to do it.
Which is such a waste of energy, right? And time. Like, what else could you be putting that?
And you're pulling yourself
mental
away.
Energy on.
Right. And you're pulling yourself away essentially from the right decision.
Totally.
Because you need to go think about it. So we do this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, make a choice and get on with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because your gut already told you what the answer is, right? When I talk about you being the source of creation in your own life, you know, this is directly connected to that. All of the answers to all of the questions that could be presented to you are inside of yourself.
Right. Based upon a value system, right?
Based upon a value system.
That your gut checks for you.
Well, and here's the thing. If what I just said was triggering to you in any way, and the first time somebody ever said that comment to me, like, Oriana, all of the answers to all of your questions are inside of you, I was like, bro, you don't know me. Right? Because it was so deeply challenging to me to hear that I could have all of the answers and at the same time be in such a state of confusion at that point in time in my life, right? So if that statement that you just heard, all of the answers are inside of you, is like, what the hell? The reason that that's true is because you are the source of creation in your life. You are the final decision. You are the decider, the creator, the architect, right? You are the one that all of this comes from,
right,
or doesn't. And that happens when you choose to step into that role in your life.
Mm-hmm. And you have that choice.
You have that choice, right? And so many people are disconnected from that. And so when you talk about you feel it in your gut, and it's usually the first thing that you felt, yes or no, and the first you usually can even hear, like, you know, maybe in your mind's ear, right? Let's say people refer to the mind's eye. I'm going to refer to the mind's ear. You can kind of hear inside of yourself a resounding yes or no, you know. But if you're disconnected from yourself, you're not going to feel that gut instinct. You're not going to hear that voice of intuition, and you're not going to be able to make that quick, decisive,
right,
you know, action plan.
Do you think there is, well, I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I want to. So do you think that our value system and our ability to make that choice, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, choose, listen to that gut feeling, is something that you can exercise, something that you can grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's not enough to be in the right place at the right time, but you have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. So your value systems could change as time goes on. Something that you used to value, you could no longer value, and move to change that. So what I'm really asking is growth a big part of overcoming resistance?
Yeah. personal growth is everything.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's self-mastery, right? Like this is the purpose of the podcast, right? Like self-mastery is the place where that allows me to be able to say good opportunity, but not totally aligned with my values. So I'm going to go ahead and say no, right? Or another thing could be like, yes, that is a potential way that I could make money. And also, it's not going to take me in the direction of the goals that I have planned for myself this year.
Exactly. Is it in service to you?
Right. Is it in service to me? Is it in service to my clients? Possible way I could make money, and also not aligned with my values, not aligned with my life purpose right now, not aligned with my goals for this year. Thank you for thinking of me. I'm going to respectfully decline. Right. Whereas most people just let themselves get pulled in every which way, in every direction by every potential opportunity that pops up where they so-called could make some money, you know? And if you value money very highly, then you might operate that way, right? You might actually think that that's a way that you're expressing your value system for money, right? Whereas some people might realize, actually, in my value system for money, that means that I'm going to choose one or two big meaningful projects that have the highest potential, right, for creation, for making a good living, right, for wealth.
High achiever versus high performer is happening right here. Correct. So this is a high achiever type of mindset, not a consistent high performer type of mindset.
Right. Consistent high performer is going to say, what are the one or two big things that I could do to create wealth in my life?
Exactly.
And focus my energy and habits on that, right? When you understand that value system, right, and how to align your decision making with your values, because your values actually create a filter for you to look at everything in the world.
Exactly.
I tell people, like, there's opportunity overload right now. Like, I can't open my Instagram or my LinkedIn without finding messages about different ways that I could make money, engaging in all kinds of different things. Some things that I'm like, how did you even find me? I don't even care about this, right? But it's opportunity overload, but you have to recognize also that there's an opportunity cost to everything you say yes to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're talking about now is resistance in the form of distractions.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm not in service to myself and my one thing, if you will, right? My Gary Keller one thing. If you haven't read that book, you should. But it talks about what's the one thing that I can focus on that makes everything tomorrow either easier or unnecessary. Right? And so a lot of times we're distracted by stuff that pulls us away from our one thing. And that shows up that is a form of resistance. Now, the flip side to that is that if I'm focused on the one thing, I'm going to encounter things that are going to stretch me, things that are going to be resistance, things because in the form of, I don't know how to do this. And a lot of people will either say, all right, well, let's get it. Let me figure out how this is going to work. I'm not going to let this stop me. I'm going to figure out how to get over, under, around, break through this roadblock. Or I shut down and say, I'm not good enough. I can't do it. It's not going to happen. It wasn't meant to be.
Oh my gosh.
No, bitch, it was meant to be. You just waited for something to drop into your lap. Right? We so many times have this in you believe in a higher power, I believe in a higher power. And we think that this higher power is just going to create for us. Like if I sit back, it's just going to fall into my lap. It's supposed to happen, then it'll happen. Okay. This doesn't just happen because you wanted it to.
Right.
Opportunities arise and you have to be able to seize those opportunities, right? It's not about just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. It's about being able to see the opportunity that may or may not stretch you and force you to become the person you're supposed to become in order to have the things you're supposed to have. Now, a lot of people shut down and they go, well, if God wants me to have it, I'll have it. No, he gave you the opportunity to go and create it or make it happen, but you chose to hide behind resistance.
Right. And rather than stretch your faith. Right? I swear, like, that phrase, just that statement that so many people use is such a cop-out, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like I've never used it before, right? I've said not meant to be, but honestly, like that mindset is a graveyard where ideas and personal growth go to die, because it's an excuse, and it's a way of getting out of having to do the self-examination and reflection necessary to really get to the root of like, why did I allow the obstacle that presented itself between me and my goal to win? That's
because
what that is.
Because it was uncomfortable.
Right? I'm going down the path toward my goal, and I came across an obstacle, and then I decided this obstacle's too big for me.
Which means your goals. You're telling yourself your goals are too big for you. That's a trash mindset to have, right? What famous basketball, Michael Jordan, LeBron James ever said, you know what? I can't seem to get 10 3-pointers in a row. I guess I'm not good enough to play this game anymore. Like, no, they go, right? They go and they practice and they play and they go and they practice and they play, rinse and repeat over and over and over and over and over again, to the point where some idiot says, oh, they're an overnight success. No, they weren't. You just have now hearing of them, but you weren't there for the roadblocks, for the plow throughs, for the, I'm going to beat this up.
Yeah.
Right?
All the tears. Yeah.
Right.
The pain.
The mindset has to go from, this is a roadblock, so I'm going to stop. That has to transform into, here's a roadblock. What do I need to learn to get through it? What do I need to learn? How do I need to expand my mindset? And what actions do I need to take to get to that point?
Yeah. I think you have to first even just be in the position to be able to recognize this is just a roadblock. This is just an obstacle, right? This is just something that I need to overcome. I think there's this misaligned expectations where we think the path between me and my goal should be straight, narrow, and right.
It's a winding mountain path.
Right. It's a straight line. It's clean. It's clear. There's no obstacles on the path. And if I happen to come upon any obstacle, I'm going to use that as a sign from the universe, so-called universe, that this is something that I shouldn't be doing at this point in time in my life, or at all, right, or ever. And I'm just saying, use a little bit more emotional intelligence with yourself. Because, just the expectation that there should be zero obstacles, zero resistance, that the entire way between you and your goal is going to feel, like a slip and slide. For those of you born in the 80s, right? You know what that slip and slide is, right? Like, that's just completely unrealistic, right? So what I find are people have unrealistic expectations, right? They're not asking the right questions, right? These are kind of like the mental and personal barriers to overcoming your resistance, right? Not asking the right questions, don't know what their value system even is in the first place, right? So if you don't know what your value system is, you're really, really probably struggling with decision making, or you're constantly in indecision, and that experience is an experience of suffering. So, to get yourself out of that, it would help you to get very clear on what your values are.
Yeah, and I also see people who, let's say you get to a certain point where, I need to figure this problem out. Problems are opportunities, okay? Resistance is an opportunity for you to learn, for you to grow, for you to ask questions. But the one mistake that I see a lot of people making is they go to seek advice from people who have no fucking business giving the advice. So be very careful who you're allowing to spoon feed you things that are not going to take you through that resistance, right? Now, some people are going to shoot you down no matter what. They're going to say, oh, well, maybe you just weren't built for sales. Oh, honey, mama never did anything except raise babies, and that's okay for you to do that too. Right? And that's, to me, is just the inability to filter the bullshit. Right? What did I say yesterday? I was like, stop eating the bullshit that somebody's trying to spoon feed you from a spoon they've never actually eaten from themselves.
Yeah.
Like, why are we taking advice on business from people who've never owned a business? Why are we taking financial advice from people who are broke? Yeah. Right? Why are we taking advice from somebody who said, oh, I tried that once and it didn't work for me?
Right.
Okay.
Once.
Well, why didn't it work for you? Right? So in our last episode, we talked a lot about tribes. Right? There are people out there who have been in your situation and who have overcome it. Right? So go talk to those people.
Or go read their books.
Right. Read their books. Engage with those people who you aspire to be like, who have achieved the things that you have achieved, and find out what it is you need to learn to break through this barrier.
Yeah. Hire them to coach or mentor you.
Right. Stop letting the barriers define what you did and didn't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times resistance is just we don't know enough. I don't know enough about a certain thing. I don't know enough to, know if I really want to go all in on that, or I don't know enough to make a decision either way. So just recognizing like, you could be creating resistance in yourself by placing the expectation on yourself that you should know more than you do. And that you need to decide right now, right? I don't respond well to being put in a position where I need to make a decision about something major, like instantaneously with a person, right? Or else that opportunity is going to go away. I'm like, bye, right? Like I make decisions about how I'm going to operate on my terms and my timeline, not yours, not anyone else's, right? Like, so I don't respond well to that pressure. You must decide now or this sale will go away or this opportunity will never come back again. Like, okay, that's cool. And yeah, I'm not going to bend myself backwards unless it feels completely aligned, right? What I was saying previously was like, if something is not a hell yes for me, then it's a no.
Right. It's a shitty sales tactic is all it is, right? It's 80s used car salesmen trying to push you into making a decision
that's better for them.
Right, that's better for them. You're absolutely right. But you mentioned earlier, if it doesn't align with your values, then that's a resistance you have to listen to, right? If it aligns with your values and you love it, but you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, then that's your own self giving you a roadblock to your potential success, right? So being very keenly aware, emotionally intelligent, as you mentioned, right? To be able to make adequate decisions. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to breaking through the resistance, the number one thing you have to do is?
Well, you have to look at that situation and you have to get into action.
Into action. The number one thing you have to do is get into action, right? You cannot sit and wait for it to fall into your lap. I already said this. You have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. But you have to take the action.
First step.
Yep. You have to take the action in being uncomfortable, realizing that this is resistance that you've created in your own brain that you need to plow through. What do you need to learn? Who do you need to talk to? Where do you need to go? What are the things that you need to do to close, as you always say, close the gap between who you are now and who you need to be, right? Closing the gap between you and you, right? You have to take that action. If not, nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah. You have to take that first step, consult who you need to consult if you need to consult someone, right? For those of you who just feel connected, like I felt that in my gut, my gut right away said yes, or my gut right away said no, make your decision accordingly. But after you decide, you have to commit. You have to go all in. You have to take that first step of action. That's the whole point of really being in the conversation with yourself, even about overcoming your resistance, right? I mean, you could actually just sit with yourself and be like, okay, I'm experiencing some resistance right now. I don't really know where it's coming from. I don't really know what it's about. Let me sit with this, right? And just be with that and see what comes up for you, right? Oh, okay, I'm experiencing resistance because I actually want this, but there are influential people around me who are saying the opposite, right? So there's some kind of clash there of information in your mind. What are you going to go with? Well, if you have no idea what your values are, you're probably going to end up choosing your need to belong with this group or be associated with this person over what your own inner intelligence is telling you, what your own intuition is telling you, right? For whatever reason. And we see that a lot. There's a lot of people that do that, or they'll do it at different points in time in their life, for different reasons. There's a lot of different reasons that people do that. So there's no judgment there. I've certainly done it. I think that's part of the learning, growing process, is going, whoa, okay, wait a minute. Am I saying yes to something that I really want to say no to? So in essence, I'm going against myself. I'm going against my own desires. I'm going against my intuition. And what I know to be true for me, right? Am I doing that? And if I am doing that, why am I doing that, right? Is it because of affiliation that I want to keep? Is it because of my own feelings of guilt and shame over whatever, is associated with that? Like, you really got to tease that out. And this is really, the value of working with a coach, because a coach can actually help you walk through that.
Shameless plug.
Not really. Like, They don't have to hire me as their coach, right?
Right. No, I just mean shameless plug for coaching in general, because this is what we do.
This is what we do, but this is also why we do it. And this is why we have coaches too.
Exactly.
Right? Like my coach helps me tease this shit out, because when I'm in it, right? I'm in my life, right? I'm not an external observer of my life all of the time. I'm living it. I'm in it. I am the fish in the water, right? I am the creator and the experiencer.
Yeah, you got to think about it as if I'm hanging a group of pictures on the wall. Sometimes I go, "Hey, babe, come in here and take a look at this for me, and let me know what you think."
Can you stand back there and look?
Yeah, stand back there and look. Is this straight? What do I need to do? Which way do I need to move? And you need somebody that can do that for you in your life, right? We spend so much time, like, helping everything around us, right? If your dog was sick, you'd pay the $5,000 to get the dog taken care of. But would you spend $5,000 on yourself to improve your mental capacity?
Yeah.
To grow yourself as an individual?
Yeah.
No, because the world tells you to get a job, work the 9 to 5, blah, blah, do all the bullshit.
I think the world also tells you can do it on your own. And that's probably the biggest lie of all.
Exactly.
Not because, you're lacking capability or capacity or anything like that, but because you're in it. You can't see what you're in when you're in it. It's really tough to tease it out to the extent that you really need to, and also feel it, right?
And be called on the bullshit.
Yeah, and so having somebody that can support you with coaching, mentoring, accountability, that can actually walk you through your own process, right? Hold space and be supportive for you to tease out your own resistance and just guide you through that process, right? Like as an observer, and go, well, why do you think that you think that?
Yeah.
Why do you think that you made that decision? Absolutely. What did you need from those people when you decided to do that thing? What were you looking for? Yeah, and actually can put you in the position to get the realization like, oh, wow, yeah, I was looking for approval. Oh, yeah, I did want their validation. Yeah, I didn't want to lose that relationship, or I didn't want to disappoint someone, right? And they help you realize that you're in a story. You're in a story that you're telling yourself, and you're giving that story a painful meaning, right? Yeah. And those are the experiences that we end up manifesting that create suffering in our lives.
Absolutely. I love everything you said. And if you guys are looking for more references on resistance and overcoming resistance, there's an amazing book that I read by Steven Pressfield, who's also, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's the author of The Legend of Bagger Vance, right? But he has a couple self-help, personal growth tools and books, and one of them is called The War of Art. Not the art of war, don't confuse them, but Steven Pressfield, The War of Art, and it is the battle against your own internal resistance. Super good book, easy read. I think it's like a 3-hour audiobook. So if you guys are looking for further depth on how to overcome resistance and really step into the person that you're supposed to be, I definitely will vouch for that book. It's so good. I read it maybe a year or two ago. So good. So good. And then from our personal experience, because this is always fun to talk about, tell everyone about a time when resistance showed up for you. Maybe you didn't recognize it. Now you do. Or maybe it took you a little while to get past that resistance to step into who you're supposed to become.
Yeah.
We can be simple and just talk about something you feel as resistance on a regular basis that you're working through.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, the reason I go, is because there's so many examples. Right. Right? Like, I could experience.
You're not immune.
Yeah, I mean, I could experience resistance over like, I'm hungry, but I can't leave my desk right now because I want to finish this project, right? And there's my resistance, my stomach's growling, right? Mm. Or I could, because I'm a person who's consistently all in on their personal development work. I mean, I experience resistance in my personal development work and in my personal growth all of the time. All of the time, daily, right? I'm working with my coach right now on doing some forgiveness work, and I have all kinds of resistance over that, and I have all kinds of stuff that I thought I had so-called already dealt with popping back up and like rearing its head. And I'm like, I thought I dealt with this, right? But yeah, we're not immune as coaches. We still have to feel through our stuff. We still have to do our own work. We have coaches to support us to do our work. And I would say, honestly, like if you're looking for a coach or looking to hire a coach at any point in time in your life, I would be really weary of a coach who doesn't do the work on themselves.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm not talking about a coach. Be wary of the coach who's going to help you do something that they've never done.
Again, don't get spoon-fed the bullshit from somebody who hasn't eaten.
Exactly. So whether that's business building or personal development or, personal growth or healing or anything like that, if they haven't done their healing, they can't support your healing. If they haven't done their personal growth, if they haven't grown that business to 1 million, they're not going to be able to help you grow your business to 1 million.
Facts. No lies.
So, go with a person who is actually totally transparent about the work that they've done on themselves, and how they work with clients to be able to do that work as well. But yeah, I experience resistance every single day about major decisions, big decisions, small ones, big ones. I have learned more recently to pull back on how I overcome that resistance, like what are the methods that I'm going to use. So I've become much more, I would say, discerning and disciplined about really reflecting on who am I going to go to, and am I going to go to someone who is that person, right? So, and like what do I want? So let's say I reflect, I make a determination. Do I need to consult with somebody about this? If my answer to that is yes, I'm really discerning about who. And once I choose that person, then it's like, well, what is it do I really want from them? And that came from an experience that I had where I actually put myself in like 2 weeks of a lot of stress and pressure, just to realize that what I was doing was seeking approval from my parents.
Oops.
Yeah. And then within that process and at the end of that process where when it came down to it, I ended up making the same decision that was my gut instinct from the jump, like from the get-go. Right. But
There's
I put myself
a lot of wasted time and energy and effort.
Yeah, I put myself through this whole rigmarole.
To get to the same place that you knew that you were going to go, or should have just made the decision from the beginning.
From the jump.
Again, rewind this 25 minutes ago and say, hey, gut feeling, limbic system is telling me yes or no. Jump in there. Don't do it. Right. Do it.
So at the end of it, then that 2 weeks of stress and pressure that I created, because I am the source of all creation in my life, guys, right? I projected that onto them, and I made it their fault that I experienced those 2 weeks of stress and pressure, right? When that was my creation.
How many of you have done that?
Right? And then I used that as an excuse to be displeased with them, right? Like now I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm upset with them over something that was entirely my creation, right? So this is why I'm saying coaches need coaches, people need mentors, because when you're in this shit, you cannot see it, right? Even as a coach, I'm not seeing what I'm doing in that moment and what I'm creating, and the fact that stress and pressure is my own creation, I'm not seeing it until afterward. You know how and why I saw it? Because my coach pointed it out to me, right? And my coach said, what is it that you were looking for from them? And how could you have handled that differently? And I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I wanted them to be pleased. I wanted them to be okay with the initial decision I had already made. And he said, did you want their approval? And I was like, shit, I did want their approval.
Did you need it?
Right? So that was my first moment of self-awareness, right? Of like, oh, holy crap, right? I'm in it. I'm in the shit, right? And then my second moment of self-approval or of awareness was like, he asked me, well, why did you need that? How could you have handled that differently? And I said, I don't know that there was any way to handle that differently unless I just didn't completely avoided ever sharing the entire thing with them. And he said, so isn't a learning lesson now that you could trust yourself to make these decisions and you don't have to consult with anyone? And I was like, shit.
Damn it. Why are you so right all the time?
Right? Right? Yeah. Yeah. So this is God's way of showing me something really important about myself, right? Like watch what you're looking for when you go to people for consultation. I'm not saying don't go to people for consultation. I believe deeply in having a tribe and having a board of directors in your life, right? But watch out for the reasons you're going to them, and watch out for what you create based on what they tell you, because at the end of the day, you're still the final decision maker in your own life. And if you're looking for approval and validation constantly from people around you to confirm that every decision you're making is the right one, you'll be in trouble, and you'll feel pulled in a million different directions, and you'll feel like you're always letting people down and always disappointing people and can't get it right.
Yeah, the only person you have to serve is yourself, and I feel like I face the same types of resistance at times, and you and I talked recently just about, as a healthcare entrepreneur, I didn't see a lot of coaches out there who were working with healthcare entrepreneurs. So I was like, oh, you know what? I've got this great business. We've grown to $1 million in 3 years, and I figured so many things out that I didn't know, and I took so many courses that weren't healthcare business related. They were just business related, and healthcare is such a different business. Healthcare entrepreneurs have such different fears, resistances, hurdles, tasks in a business than any other business does. It's very, very different. So I have to take all these things that I learned and say, okay, now how can I apply this to healthcare to make our business really grow? And I did that. And I said, okay, now I have this map, this blueprint that I can share with other people. I don't see anybody else out there doing this. I'm going to do it. But when you want the brand new red Jeep because you don't see any on the road, you go buy it, and the first thing you see the day you buy it is 10 more red Jeeps just like the one you just bought. And so where I thought I was going to be a shark in a pond, I was not. I started seeing stuff on my feed for other people who'd written books like I did, or who offer coaching, or this system or that system for healthcare, or grow your practice, or whatever it was. And then I started to go, oh shit, I thought I was sitting on something. It was a gold mine. It was going to be really easy for me to put this out there. And people go, oh my God, there's nothing like this. We need help. And there's other stuff there. And I go, fuck, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
So it brought up some limiting beliefs.
Maybe other people are already doing this and they're better at it than I ever could be. Why would people listen to me? Why would anyone want to buy my stuff? I imposter syndrome to myself, right? Who's going to want to listen to me? Who's going to want to take into account what I have to say? I stare at the whiteboard and go, you got all these modules, all this mapping stuff, but somebody else is already doing it. And I'm like, no, fuck that. They're not doing it. They're not doing it the way I'm doing it. They're doing it the way they're doing it. And people will connect with them for what they do. And people will connect with me for what I do. This is the reason why there's, 100 different car companies out there, because people have different price points, different desires, different wishes for the way the shit looks, right? So you don't have to step into something and create this all brand new thing and think it's going to be magical. You can step into something and say, I'm going to create this because I want to help people do this. It doesn't matter what anybody else out there is doing, because I'm doing this for others, and they're going to connect and relate to me because of who I am.
Sure, yeah.
And that was something resistance-wise just in recent months I had to get past, creating an online virtual course, and, who else is out there doing it, and well, maybe theirs is better than mine. You know what? I don't give a shit if theirs is better than mine. I really don't. Yeah. Right? I'm putting something together that I know worked and built $1 million business for me and for my team.
Right, and nobody else has that experience. Nobody else is bringing that to the table because they didn't live your life.
Exactly. Or a lot of times you find people they're spoon feeding you the bullshit that they don't eat, right? I grow medical practice. Are you a medical professional? No. Have you ever owned a medical practice? No. But I've helped 10,000 people grow theirs. I'm like, okay, we have social proof, but what can you tell me about being a healthcare provider? How are we going to connect? Right? It doesn't make sense to me, right? It's like you're trying to tell me how to build a car, but yet you work in finance. How do those two come together, right? The expert, by the way, is the one that gets you the result that you're looking for. It's not the one with the most education or the least education, right? If I'm looking for a plumber to fix a shitty toilet in my house and I can't get anybody to come see, but my neighbor has experience. He comes and fixes it. Guess who's the expert in my eye? The neighbor, not the guy I tried to call to get to come out. So I say all that to say, the resistance you create in your own mind usually doesn't even serve you. It's just a way to keep you comfortable and to keep you feeling less than. If you keep listening to it, you'll be the 75, 80-year-old who goes, man, I really wish I would have.
Yeah. You really got to pay attention to what the resistance is, right? Examine it. Look at it. Most of people just avoid resistance because it doesn't feel good. So, right, like maybe if I don't acknowledge that have this weird feeling in my body, it'll just go away. And it's like, it's not going to go away until you address the circumstances that created it, whether that's your mindset or whether that's like, you need to actually say no to this because you're at max capacity or over capacity and you keep saying yes to things that you should be saying no to. You're in a situation, relationship, business partnership, something that's not serving you and you need to get out, right? Like a lot of times this resistance is like this little voice that's just like, hey, look at this, right? It's like, I would say it's like if I had a cut on my arm that was bleeding, it's the response of my body of bleeding is its way of saying, look at this, right? The pain is my brain saying, look at that thing, right? Examine that. And so that we often don't translate that and use that type of thinking when it comes to mindset, emotions, feelings, right? Sensations in the body, things like that. We don't normalize this feels painful, this feels bad, let me look at it. We actually have normalized as a society, this feels painful and bad, let me ignore it, let me avoid it, let me walk away from it, let me repress it. Like that's...
And so what we're saying in this entire podcast is to stop ignoring your resistance. Instead, digest it. Why is it there? Find ways to move beyond it. And I hope that all of you listening to this got some really great insight into yourself and the resistance that's held you back. And hopefully now that that little voice inside of you that tells you to do something, that gut feeling is the one you should listen to. Stop overanalyzing, right? So we thank everybody for joining us today and listening to our conversation on resistance. And we will be back in another couple weeks with some other daring episodal fun to drop on you guys. So I hope everyone's staying safe, staying well. Go plow through your resistance. Go create your life of purpose and just be amazing.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Please come on back. And if you like this episode, please subscribe, share, leave us a review. We do read all of them. Please go ahead and also comment on these posts so that we can read your comments and learn a little bit more about you and what it is that you're looking for. Let us know what topics you would like to hear us talk about, and join us on Clubhouse every Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where we are talking about some very similar topics and also engaging with our audience. So you would have the opportunity to ask us questions, to receive coaching, to engage with a community of people who's actually building tribe, building community, talking about personal development and professional development in ways that are meaningful. So please join us. Clubhouse every Tuesday at 2:30.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thanks. Bye-bye.